Welcome to Crypto Talk Radio, the podcast for everyday investors like you. Visit us on the web at cryptotalkradio.net. And now, here's your host, Leister.
Thank you for that, Bailey, and welcome everybody out there in Crypto Talk Radio, found at cryptotalkradio.net. It's New Year's Eve. We're upon the crust. We're waiting patiently. Some of us are patient, not everybody. Patiently for the new year. 2025 is coming around. A new president is forthcoming. We have to see what the world is going to look like under the new regime. We, of course, lost former President Jimmy Carter, passed away. And for those that didn't know, because some were asking the question, can you kind of summarize, why there's so much chatter about Jimmy Carter? Setting aside that he was kind of the oldest living president, but also the thing with Jimmy Carter, from my perspective, and I think many would echo this sentiment, people liked him. He was kind of like what Reagan started being. Reagan, for those that don't know, he was an actor, movie actor. He had no background or experience. He was just liked. Schwarzenegger in California was his governor. He was just liked, right? People that are liked, generally liked, they get a shot. They might be inept at the job, but they're liked. Jimmy Carter was liked. He was a humanitarian. He was a positive force. Gerald Ford was another one that was generally, liked, but he had experience and background. But Jimmy Carter came in as just somebody who was in over his head from the jump, arguably. Was not a good president. The Americans stuck, I think it was Iran, over 400 days. He did not excel in the role. That was Jimmy Carter. But he was liked and he was respected as a person, not necessarily as a president. That's why he's a controversial president for sure in that regard, like Reagan was. But I think that's why some people will say, even Trump had said, worst president ever at one point, because it's kind of irrefutable that he was up there in terms of the bad ones. Now, of course, Biden was like, hold my beverage of choice in terms of worst presidents, because I got to think, I felt Nixon was up there as far as bad presidents. I thought Nixon was up there, but geez, Biden has blown past every president I can think of that's terrible in the list. At some point, I'm going to go back into some of my books and just refresh on some of the older presidents, but I can't think of one that's worse than Joe Biden for multiple reasons, not even just his ineptitude, not even because of the Alzheimer's behaviors, not even because of just him threatening Americans and him this is my way and this is what we're going to do, and living Sodom and Gomorrah. There was nothing positive redeemed. And then pardoning left and right near the end of his stuff, and just shady, slimy, to the point people just can't, even Democrats, it's like, God, can we just get rid of this guy? That's when you know it's bad. That's when you know it's bad. So that's the story about Jimmy Carter. He's liked as a person, he was, but he was an inept president. Joe Biden was neither. And so that was some of the controversy, some of the chatter around when he passed was with comments made by Trump, for example, and Obama. That's what that's all about. I'm going to talk about cryptocurrency very briefly, a couple news bits, but I'm going to be focusing today's episode on Terrarium for those that are interested that might have been around that ecosystem. So let's go and feet first on this business. Coindesk.com, we're going to go ahead and zoom out to the month chart, starting with Bitcoin, which has been struggling a little bit, a low of 91, shortly under 92,000 bucks over the last 24 hours, a high of 96, but hovering at the 94,000 mark with a downward trend. I was surprised to see a lack of a strong recovery for Bitcoin. I expected it was going to recover better than it was. A lot of outflows on the Bitcoin ETF side. For disclosure, I do have Bitcoin ETFs that sit off in an account. I don't even look at it. It's just kind of there because I figured it's going to get, with the amount I have, it's going to at least 10x from where it is. So I'm just letting it sit there because if it does 10x, that's a lot of money. I mean, by the time that happens too, it would pay off a good chunk of my house. That's how much I have. So I figured I'll just let it ride. Why mess with it? There's no value in touching it or spending it or doing anything. I don't need the money. I make good money on my job. So I do have Bitcoin ETFs, but I don't stare at it. And hopefully you're not staring at graphs, because I feel like right now, especially, this is the right time to focus on yourself. We get close to a new year. Improve your life. Get to where you're doing more for your family. Whatever you need to do to get better. This is recovery time. This is the time to recover from the damage wrought by the Biden administration. It's going to take some time. I'm not suggesting it's easy. I'm suggesting it's arguably necessary that we do. So hopefully you do take this as an opportunity to refresh, reset, sit back and think about what are the things we could do better, not just cryptocurrency, but overall in your life that will improve your situation and position you for greater things to come in the future. We also have to look at, from the financial aspect, all of the different things that we, with the rate cut that happened and Donald Trump going into office and some of the turmoil with the Speaker of the House and everything, we need to look at the economy. There were speculations that we were en route to another housing bubble. Turns out we have a housing crunch. The demand is starting to climb. However, the supply is not commensurate with that demand. What's also happening is you have people, I mentioned on a past episode, older people who are sitting on really low rates like 3%, 4%, and they refuse to sell their homes because they don't see value in losing that low rate. Even though they like to downsize, they don't want to lose those low rates that they're currently in. You have people that are getting older now, younger folks, they're getting older, and they want to start buying something and start a family. Well, they're not going to settle for like a condo. They need the room, they need the space and everything. So they want to get into the housing market, and they see prices of $400,000 or something and realize it's just not going to be reality. There's a crunch because the demand is now hitting a fever pitch, and they want to try to get more people into homes, but they don't know how to do it. You might figure, well, why aren't they building? The reason they're not building is because there's a number of factors at the macro level, but at the micro level, the price of supplies is sky high. The price of wood is an absolute joke. You think of how much we have, forests and everything. The price of wood is a joke. The price of concrete's a joke. Just raw materials is an absolute catastrophe. So they're not able to build houses. This is why I said once, I felt like Sears made a critical mistake getting out of the business of selling those home kits where you had everything you needed to build a house in a kit that they would sell straight off the shelf. And then all you had to do is buy the land. Land is cheap. It's cheap everywhere. I actually thought about buying some little cheap land in different places just to have it as it appreciates at some point, because it's going to. But then I thought about, could there be some sort of, toxicity or some other damage to the plot that I wouldn't know about? It's the only reason I didn't do it. But let's say it's a good plot of land. If you had these home kits, and they do exist, just not at Sears, not the way Sears did it, where it's everything you needed literally in the kit delivered. The ones that are available are not that same. I'm saying if we had those kits, there's a market, there's a demand for that's not tapped. And I would like to see that come back, because that's the only way we're going to get past this slump we're currently in. And then there's a lack of, I think, skilled builders. Part of that is around the whole H-1B controversy, which I'm not going to talk about in the episode. But there's just a lack of skilled labor to do a lot of these things. They don't want to work the jobs, or they're not competent to work the jobs. We're in a world where we don't, I was having a conversation with somebody about schools. As far as I know, they don't teach, they don't do auto shop, metal shop, electric shop, home ec, all of these wood. They don't do these trade level classes that I felt were the strong value for people to be self-sufficient. If they don't teach those anymore, how can you expect people to get into those trades if all you're doing is steering them to STEM? Then you look at the stock market, right? And this ties back to crypto in a way. You look at the stock market, and the stocks that are climbing are not those blue collar stocks. They're the white collar stocks. They're the ones that are around STEM. But the ones that are around STEM are also more volatile. They're less trustworthy. They're fragile. They're doomed to fail. Not that they're going to stay failing, but they're extremely volatile. They're risky. They're gambles. You're rolling the dice at the end of it, expecting something to crack. Some people are cool with it. I just like to see a diverse portfolio, including some of those blue collar trade companies, so that we're not YOLOing into STEM, because I do think there's money to be made, is what I'm saying, in the blue collar. If we would just focus on the damn thing instead of just focusing on computers and AI and garbage, and let's focus on the blue collar, because there's money to be made there and they don't want to do it. I think it's really a story about the United States and what they're willing to tolerate and what they're willing to go after, what they're willing to focus on, and what they want to do with their business. But I don't have the greatest confidence in the competency of the United States. However, I might feel a little bit better given recent news, that being United States takes custody of Do Rug Pull, aka Do Kwon. Extradition process is all wrapped up. They finally caught this joker, absolute scam artist, and I will call out some people on YouTube adamantly defending the guy as some sort of a hero when he was never a hero. He's a rug puller. When you make money available and then you make money not available, that's a rug pull. That's essentially what he did. So what I was told, this came from Happy Caddy, what I was told is that he's no longer part of the thing at all. And there was a burn that took place and all this stuff to wind down some of the older operations and try to get stuff back on track. If you notice on CoinMarketCap and other places, the circulating and total supply numbers have not changed. So we hear about all this burn activity. We don't see adjustments in the numbers that are happening. So is it truly that they were burned? Happy Caddy says that they were burned. Jay, I don't know that they truly were. I can only go off the sources. And with CoinMarketCap, allegedly they have an API that is querying live to understand the supply numbers. So you would expect that theirs would be the most accurate. If it's accurate, I don't see any sort of movement in the token supply. I'm just calling out what I see. But them catching this guy, finally getting extradited from Montenegro to the United States, that gave me, it was a warm place in my heart. I felt good. It's like finally they're going to take this guy and deal with this dude and finally bring some justice and hopefully make some people whole. I don't know if it's going to make people whole, but I do think it's good that they caught him at least so that he can be brought to some form of justice. There were some people that said, we don't know why he's being extradited to the United States because the crime wasn't there. He's being extradited to the United States because the United States is a dog. They're a gorilla. When you rip off its citizens, when there's money involved, I said it. Anytime there's money involved and you rip off its citizens by way of cheating the tax system. So you're cheating the tax system. You're cheating them out of getting money. That's when they care. They care when you're ripping off the tax system. Ripping off the tax system, if you take people's money, they can't pay taxes. If they can't pay taxes, the tax man's going to come after your ass. And that's what it is. And then Do Rug Pull didn't pay taxes, so they would come after your ass. That's the warning to people. All these scammers don't understand. The moment you duck taxes, they're coming after your ass. They leave you alone if you pay taxes, as ironic as that is. But the moment you stop paying taxes, they're coming after your ass. That's what they did with the Satama Scam Syndicate, is they went after them after they saw people weren't paying any taxes on this business. So now Do Rug Pull, he was supposed to go to South Korea. That's what they wanted to do, is South Korea, because that's where he was when all this took place, allegedly. But going to the United States so he can face trial for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy related to the fail of Terraform Labs. So keep an eye on that one. I think that's great. I think it's great news. I think it's bullish news. I don't know if it's going to help the project, but I think it's good news overall. Other good news that I want to hear more of in the new year, speaking of good news, is I want to hear Donald Trump come out and do something open about the Bitcoin reserve that he promised, that he campaigned on. He talked about doing a Bitcoin reserve. We have not heard any follow-up since Jerome Powell went up there, killed the business by saying we can't do that. And I clarified, it's not that we can't. There's just not a law that says they can. You don't need a law that says you can. You simply don't want a law that says you cannot. There is no law that says you cannot, which means they could do it. I just want Donald Trump to affirm what I suspect to be the truth. I haven't heard that yet. Donald Trump has always been afraid of being left behind by other countries. You heard him. He said, China's going to do it if we don't do it. So he is sensitive to being left behind by other countries. Well, if he doesn't come out and talk about the Bitcoin reserve, he's going to get smoked by Switzerland, because the Swiss Chancellery approved proposal to include Bitcoin in their national reserves to bolster financial independence with Bitcoin, quote, Switzerland's federal chancellery has approved the formal submission of the Bitcoin initiative, a proposed constitutional amendment that would require the Swiss National Bank to hold part of its reserves of Bitcoin. Stop. Here's what you're hearing. You're hearing Switzerland trying to push forward what the United States drug their feet on under the Biden administration when they were attacking cryptocurrency and not embracing it, but simply fighting it because they did not want financial independence for its people. Rather, they're trying to go all in and make it work, but they're also trying to make it law. They're trying to what's called codify, CODIFY, make it law so that it cannot be reversed easy without, doing another law to undo it. What that does is two things. One, it helps to avoid corruption of what they're doing. Two, by making it part of the law, it makes it to where they have to do everything in their power to make it succeed. And that's what the United States should have been pushing for. But unfortunately, we were dealing with incompetent leadership all this time. And so it didn't get a chance to thrive. And that's the suck part of being, American is, you can be land of the free. We're not the home of the brave anymore, but land of the free, absolutely. But look what we're dealing with. We're dealing with incompetent leadership at points, and everything goes crash and burn. And it sucks because we don't get that same opportunity to thrive like we should, like everybody else is doing. And so that's where we're at with this where I want Trump to be. I want him to push and make it happen because I think he can. Now, he's still got Pelosi out there. I don't know why she don't just quit, but she's still got Pelosi out there. He's still got Schumer out there. Schumer's kind of been acting a little bit independent as of late. He hadn't acted like a Democrat, and AOC's been silent as a buzzard. So I think it's a different era, but I want to hear something from Trump to support this business. I also want to hear more about things that they want to do to help people avoid and be protected from all these different scam syndicate things that are out there and some of these garbage token things that are out there. I'm not just suggesting that we lock it down. I'm saying that when you have these kind of scammers like the Saitama Scam Syndicate, we make it easier for them to be held accountable. Right now, with them promoting telescam and hiding out in all their little secret chats and all the fake pumps and everything that they do, it just enables them to rip people off. And I don't want to see them get their tokens took like we saw with many of these projects that have crapped. Speaking of a project that's crapped, one project I'm going to be discussing for the remainder of this episode, and it won't take too long because I don't have a lot of information. I don't want to talk about it, but I think I need to talk about it because there are people that have been curious about it. And unfortunately, most of the other people I will be naming in my coverage here today have been dead silent about it. Fancy that. This is Terrarium. Anybody that was around at the time recalls what Terrarium was about, but I'm going to summarize and reiterate what I know. This will take a part of two things. One, what I'm aware of, which may or may not be 100% accurate because it's going off recollection, and some of these shady shysters deleted their accounts and deleted all the history. So you take for your own, knowledge whether or not they're truly scammers by the action of them deleting all the history. Because is it true that somebody who's a scammer would quickly delete all the history? I want you to make the decision. I'm not making the decision for you. But I choose to talk about Terrarium now simply to provide an answer to one question that keeps spinning around. And that's related to the Saitama Scam Syndicate and whether or not the doctors in this business knew about what was going on with Saitama. I'm going to share my thoughts on it. I'm going to share what I could find in terms of the history and tell you what I gleaned in terms of the goal and my outcome, my results. First of all, to understand at a simple level what the point of Terrarium was supposed to be, it changed. It changed multiple times. But the bottom line, as I was given to understand, and this came from a person you might have heard called Crypto Stacker. He's on YouTube. He summarized that the intent was to be a centralized exchange. That was the original vision of Terrarium. We have to step back, though. What I was told, some of this I was told, some of this I saw, some of this I heard. What I was told is that these doctors originally were whales in what was Saitama prior to the failed November 13th Vegas event. That run-up that you saw in the last month or so, just prior, that these were whales in that project. After it crapped, when they failed off the event, after it crapped, then they spun off and created Terrarium. I see a formation date of roughly February of 2022 or thereabouts. Well, that would put it right around that time that we were starting to see some significant drops, and they had just launched a buggy shit show in the Cytomask. That's right around the time. And then what I recollect is chatter around this terrarium thing and what it was planned to be, and that these doctors came together using their credentials essentially to add credibility to a project that was going to form a centralized exchange. Physical building, names, faces, the whole nine, which was appealing to certain of the YouTubers out there, Bleez being one of the primaries that I saw, Zach Humphreys being one of them, Your Pop 8, which I don't know Your Pop 8 at all, but apparently some people do, Awesome Austin, who I know, and then Crypto Stacker. And I laughed about Awesome Austin because Awesome Austin, he's one of those that he gets into these projects and takes L's. And so then there was a project that he got into, it's MMAI, Made a Monkey garbage, right? So he gets into these projects and then they crap. And that's the one where he said, I hate crypto, screw all you, I'm going home, I quit. And, because it looks bad on him, but, he asked for it, right? So that's why I chuckle a little bit. Zach Humphreys, he's all over garbage. He's a mark, right? He's a mark. They see him as a mark. They go after him. Like all these projects go after him. He came from Satama too. Crypto Stacker, geez, he was doing so much coverage on Terrarium. I don't know. He did more coverage on Terrarium than Bleez did. By the way, Bleez apparently has deleted the vast majority of his Terrarium coverage because I know he had a hell of a lot more videos that are out there, but he didn't delete, I don't think, any Satama videos. I found that rather strange because you have Satama, people who were literally caught as scammers. I mean, they were called up on the lam by the FBI, and you don't delete those when you were promoting it, you were pushing it and hyping people to buy it. You don't delete those, but you delete the Terrarium ones, and the doctors were never called up on the lam, never accused directly of anything that I could see. I don't see any legal cases. I found that rather suspicious too. Why would you delete these valuable videos that you did around Terrarium? Some of them were really good, especially when you called out what would happen that I'll talk about with the whole, Binance.us listing. Chaos. Anyhow, so Terrarium launches, and if I recall, and this is going off recollection to some degree, if I recall, it started with 100 quadrillion in supply, so unreasonably high. But that was the whole going thing at the time, was these unreasonable levels of supply on tokens, which I didn't think was a good idea. I talked about it with the HODL CEO, that the supply was always a concern. And I never could understand why all these tokens kept leaping on the quadrillions of supply and trillions of supply. And it's like, why can't you get a more reasonable supply? And here we are now. And many tokens are in the billions range. We see very rare situations where they're going to trillions, but the billions seems to be where they settle now. At the time, that wasn't the case. You were either 1 quadrillion, 10 quadrillion, 100 quadrillion, just getting outrageous numbers of supply. So they launched this business as the V1. What I was told, this came from Crypto Stacker, is that the token was not part of the original plan. The token came or was decided after the fact that the central exchange was all they were focused on doing. So the V1 apparently was never part of a long-term thing. It just became a thing. And people questioned whether they were trying to generate money or not, because these are doctors. They're wealthy. They were whales. They had lots of money. They didn't need the money. But were they trying to just generate money so they didn't have to spend it themselves? I never got a firm answer on whether or not that was the case. I just said, I don't know what's the point here. I don't understand what the hell's going on. Terrarium, mind you, was formed as an actual LLC in Wyoming, and then they formed an actual private limited company out in India, in Dubai, in the UAE. There was a gentleman by the name that I had never heard of, but by the name of Milton John Matthew. This is not the same Milton Terrarium that we would see on Twitter. This is a different Milton. This is a different guy. This guy, I had never even seen him before. But the thing is, when I see the picture of this guy, Milton John Matthew, and I look at the picture of the Milton that we know, Milton Terrarium, on Twitter at the time, he's deleted the account, but Milton at the time, the Milton Terrarium is a guy from India, clearly, visually, guy from India. The Milton John Matthew does not appear to me to be a guy from India. I thought that was kind of strange because, again, I had never heard of this name, and I couldn't place, well, where the hell is this guy coming from? But according to this, he was the, quote, founder and chief executive officer at Terrarium. I did deeper research because I'm trying to understand what the hell's going on. If you look, this Milton John Matthew person has been a keynote speaker. He's done presentations out in Asia, and it calls him out as chief executive officer at Terrarium. But this is clearly a white guy. There is no Indian of this guy. And so it's like, well, what the hell's going on? Because this is not the same Milton that we would see on Terrarium. So who is this guy? I'd never seen him anywhere online. So is it possible that the Milton that we saw on Terrarium was using a phony photo? I don't know that. I'm saying that when I looked at the list of all the people associated with the project, Milton, the one we know on Terrarium, has always been called out as the guy in charge. But this guy's called out as the guy in charge, but he's not an Indian guy. And the one on Twitter was an Indian guy. Suspicious. The plot thickens. Others that were called out, Dr. Ramana Dharmasetti, Senior Advisor, Dr. Wilman Olmedo, I had never heard of. Senior Advisor, Dr. Praveen, everybody knows Dr. Family Allergy on Twitter. That was the one that believes was befriended. And then Social Media Director, R.D. Price. Now, the social media director, R.D. Price, I had looked at Crypto Stacker. He had a couple of videos on YouTube. And in the video, he was responding as at R.D. Price. So is it possible, and I'm asking because I don't know, I'm asking legit, is it possible that R.D. Price being Crypto Stacker, are they one and the same? And if that's true, does that mean that Crypto Stacker was essentially an insider with respect to Terrarium? Meaning that his coverage was biased and slanted. I don't know for sure. I'm asking the questions. I don't know. Terrarium positioned itself as a deflationary asset. So it was going to be doing burns with every transaction. The supply allegedly was going to be, over time is going to increase value. They're going to get all these different exchanges. They did list on quite a few exchanges. But the plan, again, the primary plan was to get on this be a centralized exchange. I remember that they launched something that they called an exchange later, but it turned out to be nothing more than API off Wobie, I believe it was. And so people were not very impressed with what they saw because it was not truly an independent central exchange as was promised. I also remember they were talking about NFTs out of nowhere. They were talking about payment cards out of nowhere, talking about a blockchain out of nowhere, which all of these other projects keep talking about all this sprawl instead of their one focal point of development that they started with. So it got me thinking. Perhaps somebody got in these guys' ears and told them, no, you need to have NFTs. You got to have a card. You got to have this, because everybody else is doing it. Or they were doing it to compete with Saitama at the time because Saitama was pushing the same garbage. And so that's maybe where the train fell off the tracks, is if they lost vision of what they were focused on, which is the central exchange. I don't know. I'm saying I question why you go, if it's true that they started saying we're just going to build a central exchange, why didn't you finish that? Why are you going with all this garbage that wasn't going to get you anywhere and you weren't going to be successful at it in any case? I don't know. I really don't. Fast forward and we start seeing more of the shillers doing coverage. We start seeing people like Bleeze was doing a lot of coverage. Zach was doing coverage. Everybody's doing coverage of Terrarium. A lot of people didn't get in Terrarium. It wasn't like a significant, we didn't see the numbers like we saw with Saitama. So fortunately, there was not a lot of people that got ripped off by the business. But a lot of people got in, a reasonable amount of people got in to Terrarium, which is why I decided to do at least a partial coverage on it without going too deep in the weeds. But I wanted to talk about a couple of key points of things that I noticed with this business. I had gone to the site because once they started going on the token and talking about all this other stuff, I went to the site. I saw the terms. And the terms, that's where I swore them off that I was not going to do any extensive coverage on it because it said in the terms, we can't guarantee, we can't do it. We have no control over liquidity. We can't guarantee liquidity. There's nothing we can do. We can take it any time. All the sorts of stuff where I'm like, no, brother, you will not tell me this. And it said, you're not an investment. Screw you. It is an investment. Just everything was a red flag. And I said, and there's a video out on YouTube, I straight said, I'm not covering them because their terms straight tell you they're about to rip you off at some point. That's what I read it as. People can't jump down my throat, call me a futter. I'm calling it what it is. They told you essentially that they're going to rip you off. Fast forward to the future just ever slightly, and guess what happened? They rug pulled the project, just like I told you they were going to do. So for all you people calling me a futter for telling you the truth of what they wrote on their site, you can go have at it. You guys got ripped off because you didn't listen to me, because I told you what was on the site, which was them essentially promising that at some point they were going to rip you off because everything they were saying was bullshit. That's what it is. Moving on, though, with the terrarium business, because we need to come back. That was a future state. I spoiled it, but let's come back. Let's come back a little bit and just talk this through. Now we get chatter that they're going to move to a V2. The V2 is apparently going to have a much constrained supply, now down to 30 billion. They're going to do an airdrop to different people. Apparently, and I don't know what happened with this, but apparently from Crypto Stacker, he was talking about, here's, you're going to get poached by scammers and they're going to try to come after you and all this other stuff. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of the airdrop. We'll take care of the other exchanges. You're not going to have to worry about anything. Everything is all good. We're not going to be having a website for migration. We will take care of everything. Like they're trying to reinforce by way of their website and by way of everything else that they got it covered. And then there's flack about the supply drop because you go from 100 quadrillion down to 30 billion. So people think they're losing. They're not losing because it's the same value, but the supply drop, which is why supply, when tokens do migrations, they never succeed because people don't understand the concept of your value. They understand the number of tokens. That's what they understand. So if you do a migration, you're going to piss them off, which is exactly what happened with Terrarium. Also, some of the exchanges were still trading Terrarium number one. They didn't stop trading number one for a long time, and then all of a sudden it broke. The point is that they still saw traffic on number one. So people thought it was a scam. People thought they were getting ripped off. They didn't know what the hell was going on. I remember online, they were getting all sorts of flack because people weren't sure exactly, okay, why is this happening? Why are we still seeing this traffic? What the hell's going on in this business? Milton chimes in. Now, again, shows, this is Twitter now, not the white guy. Twitter. Milton chimes in and says that, okay, after the fact, we've enabled 100% burn tax on V1. What does the 100% burn tax do? It essentially reports that you're not able to do a trade. It basically blocks you from doing the trade. The question was, how come they didn't do that up front? People are still pissed off because they don't understand why did you do that up front? And at the end of the day, we're getting ripped off here. Like people are pissed. We're getting ripped off here. Why didn't you just do the stop of the old up front, do the air of the new, I speculated that you're dealing with people just didn't know what they were doing in the Terrarium ecosystem. I knew they weren't listening to some people that were telling them about, hey, do like this, and they just were not listening on the back end. But you're dealing with, again, a bunch of doctors and all this other stuff. I'm skipping past a lot of garbage that doesn't really matter, but I'm skipping past a bunch of garbage because I already talked about the central exchange. I want to get to the key point here so I can wrap this up, because the key point here was they were already listed on a bunch of exchanges at a point. There was an announcement that came, and we heard about it from the Terrarium people. I think it was even Milton. We heard about it from the Terrarium people, and this came, and actually it came from the Terrarium account, their main account, in March 2022. March 2022. March, they come out and they say, look, we're going to get listed on Binance US. We got approved to pay $180,000 for this business to get listed on this, which caused an unreasonable pump. People specifically, now that were named that worked for Binance US, chimed in and said, that's not us. Ignore that. That's not real. We don't have anything to do with this. We don't know what you're talking about on this business. There were at the same time, though, where they had listed, when I say they, I'm talking the doctors, they had listed this email up on site. People chimed in, they saw sales happening from the wallets that were believed to come from the doctors and or pre-sale people and or the official contract, the owner address and treasury. So people are seeing you cause this fake pump and then there's all these sales happening, which is the same damn thing that Satama had done. Even believes at this point, called it out to say there's questions, there's legit questions, what's going on here, and nobody was willing to answer. I had said when they first announced this, and I had a couple people ask the question, is this going to really happen? I said it's highly unlikely that you're going to get on Binance. I don't think it's going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen because of what I saw in the terms on the site. I just truly didn't see it. I didn't expect the sales though, but in hindsight, it doesn't surprise me because you're dealing with, again, doctors don't know what the hell they're doing. They said, I remember after the fact, they said we have to pay salaries. Nobody disputes that you should, but you should announce that you're about to do it, and you damn sure shouldn't cause a pump before you do it. So all the sketchy business that was happening with the Terrarium team, it's just cementing what I called out with that term document, that these guys, number one, they don't know what they're doing, and number two, this shady business. I don't to this day think that they purposely tried to rip you off. I think you don't know what the hell they're doing. Incompetence is just as bad as being a blatant scammer. I do think that there was somebody in their ear telling them to do the wrong shit, to mess up, because we saw it too much. There was too much smoke happening with this one, just like with Para Token, just like with so many others where they seem like Everise, where they're on the right track, they're doing it great, it's good, and then all of a sudden they're going into garbage and start doing silly, stupid mistakes, and you can't understand it. So, given that Terrarium was formed right around that time with Lilly Finance and their fiasco, and Saitama and their fiasco, and all the other garbage at the time, I can't dispute the potential that they were scammers. But back to the original question after this. So, Terrarium, all this fiasco, the Binance US thing goes crash burn. They do the sales. Nobody knows what's going on. Then they had shown pictures. Okay, we're doing a building. And then all of a sudden they go radio silent. The vast majority of them deleted their Twitter accounts and they just disappeared off the face of the earth. Praveen's still out there. He still has an allergy thing out in California, in Fresno. So they just moved on. They, business as usual. Well, how can that be? Well, I know why. That's echo chamber. They're stuck in the echo chamber. They believe what they believe, and they only want to listen to people that believe the same thing they believe. That's all it is. And they don't want to hear dissenters, which is crypto 101. The vast majority do it. But with these guys, I don't think they had enough money. They didn't need to rip you off. So I don't think they were maliciously trying to do it. I think they were blistering idiots. That's what I think. I think they were guided perhaps by marks, people that didn't know what they were doing. Who knows? It might have been Zach. It might have been Crypto Stacker. One of them might have been telling them to do garbage, and that killed the business. I can't say I wasn't an insider, but I'm saying that you're dealing with people that were already wealthy going in. They didn't need the money. Their names are up there. Their businesses are up there. They had no motivation to blatantly rip you off. They also had no logic in forming all this other garbage that they talked about instead of just focusing on the central exchange. The only logical result I can think of is that some of these marks that they were dealing with were telling them to do this garbage because it's the popular thing to do. And perhaps some of those marks pumped and dumped it too. They benefited from the pumps and dumps and then took their money and ran. I can't say that's what happened, but how else can you explain it? You really can't. So then they all disappeared. They're all gone. Back to question number one. Was Terrarium involved with Saitama to that degree as far as the scam syndicate? No, because Terrarium, as I understand, the doctors were whales in the project, lost money as part of the project, took money out when they saw it was crapping, went off to Terrarium, never looked back. Faltron, the mark, right? Faltron apparently had doxed some of the doctors. I think it was Dr. Praveen doxed and had shared this information with Manny the rug puller to help the Saitama. And of course, you now understand why I call Faltron a mark, because he's going back and forth. He'll now trash Saitama, but at the time, he was right in bed with Manny the rug puller as if he was a second wife. That's how he was. And then he moves on to this, Sama King Inu that he swears isn't part of a thing. And then now he's on that Saitama V, whatever it is that they just did. That he's a mark. He jumps. And so I can't discount the probability that him or some other mark or combination of marks got in the doctor's ears and told them, this is what you need to do. And they started going after garbage. And as a result, because they didn't know any damn better, it killed the business. I can't say that is or wasn't what happened. I'm saying that it's a probability, because otherwise it made no sense otherwise. Because if they had just gone with the central exchange, I think it would have been a successful project. I firmly believe this. And I don't believe that the Terrarium doctors were colluding with Russ, cult leader, or Manny the rug puller. I think they couldn't stand each other. I truly believe this. I also think that big picture, Saitama, the scam syndicate that was, they're to blame for a lot of these failures. Because again, as I said, they're the ones that attracted all these marks. And the marks have caused irreparable damage to the business such that we can't even repeat the beauty that was 2021 with respect to other projects that were good at the time. We had a lot of projects that were good at the time, and we can't get those back because some of those people refused to come back to it because of the damage by the Lillians and the Terrariums and the Saitamas and the Shinjas and the Shirios and all the others at the time. And then later the Everrises and so on. They just, every last one of them just seemed to kick the bucket, and it sucks. And Terrarium was one that Again, when I saw the terms, I knew they weren't going to be long for this world. But if they were listening to strong voices, people that knew what the hell they were doing, people that wanted to see them succeed, people that saw value in having another centralized exchange, if they had listened to the right people, Terrarium could have been a game changer. But they were surrounded by marks. They went all in on that, and you had too many people hyping and promoting nothing because they didn't do anything at the time. They talked about it, but they didn't do anything at the time. And so you're hyping and promoting nothing. You're hyping and promoting something that wasn't going to go anywhere. And I was happy to see that there was not a lot of people that got in. So not a lot of people got ripped off. That's the only saving grace of this whole fiasco. That's my thoughts on Terrarium. I don't think they were aligned with the scam syndicate, which is why the police didn't go after them. Should the police go after them? I think they should, because of some of the stuff that Terrarium did do. They pushed it. The stuff that we're going to do is going to enrich you. They pushed that narrative. And yet, for whatever reason, they're left alone. And I suspect that's because they probably paid the taxes. I can't say for sure. Who knows? That's Terrarium. Any questions, Phil, hit me up. If you have information, hit me up. Either way, I'm not going to talk about Terrarium anymore, though, because it's a waste of time. They did a good job deleting the track. So anything we learn now is going to have to come from the FBI if they do investigate, or one of the insiders if they do grab some stones and stop being marks and want to come out and share what they did or what they didn't do. If they're the ones that killed the business, whatever that is, if they come out with that, I'm happy to talk about that information. I don't think it's going to happen, frankly. The next one, which I'm going to commit to doing this one. I said I was going to do it. I held off because I was doing a little bit more digging. It turned into a rabbit hole. I am going to do the episode I did promise you for Brad Beatty. I don't want to, but I think I need to because I talked about doing it, and I should go ahead and just finish what it started. So I'll make sure that happens here in the next couple. Separately, so get off the Terrarium garbage. Separately, though, I want to share one piece. I actually sold a bit of my cryptocurrency out. The reason I sold is because there is a plan to get some money stacked. That's a pretty significant amount. And then I'll buy in when I see some dips that I expect more dipping is forthcoming. So now I'm going to take a strategy, basically a buyback in after it dips. That's what I'm currently doing for those curious. But I'm not dancing on crypto. I refuse because it's a cesspool. and I think we've got some downward to go. And I want to see it go to its bottom, whatever the bottom's going to be. And then that would be a buy opportunity. And then I know what to buy into, because I know what's going to run. And I'm still waiting for Ethereum because until Ethereum runs, as I said, it's not, none of this is real. It's like fake. It's not fake, but it's not sustained. I want Ethereum to run. It should run. There's no reason for it not to run. When Ethereum starts running, that's when I start getting confident. I'm not looking forward to the gas prices though, but I am looking forward to it run on Ethereum and all the other tokens that are on the Ethereum chain. And some of them that people are pissed off about are going to have some huge gains if we can get Ethereum off the freaking ground and start getting some forward motion past it. We have to see with like Solana, if Solana is going to go any further. Some people think that it's going to surpass Ethereum. Something tells me that Ethereum is going to start blowing out a lot of these competitors. Something tells me that we're going to repeat 2021 for just Ethereum I'm talking about and Ethereum-based tokens. Something tells me we're going to see a run back on Ethereum. Tenfold though I might be. Time will tell if I'm right or wrong about that one. I just have a gut feeling that Ethereum is poised and ready for that massive breakout that's going to make a lot of people rich if they're smart about investing